everyone, and welcome to Open Mic Gripe with myself, Jeffrey Ide,
and Jay Rice.
The place where serious and silly complaints come to chat.
Open Mic Gripe is a weekly podcast dedicated to hearing your gripes, grievances, and opinions on any and all topics.
Every episode, Jay and I will have an opportunity to get to the bottom of the issues which are lingering on the back of your mind and engage you in order to create constructive conversation using a combination of lighthearted comedy and well-formed logic.
If you feel like we are wrong, inappropriate, or biased, and let's be honest, likely you will, then call in, email, or tweet and let your voice be heard. You can email us at openmicgripe@gmail.com or tweet us at openmicgripe. And both of those are one word, Open Mic Gripe.
Personally, I love being corrected, but I want to impress that we can only learn by sharing our and your perspectives.
You know, as a comedian, I want everyone to feel open to sharing their views and then potentially having them ridiculed.
On this show, I will always respect the individuals who share with us, but your views, beliefs, and values are all up for debate. I hold nothing sacred.
I also hold nothing sacred. I may not even respect you, but I do like you.
So jump on in and gripe on the Open Mic with Jay Rice and Jeffrey Ide.
Welcome back to the Open Mic Gripe, where serious and silly complaints come to chat.
Bring on those chatting of serious and silly issues.
We will do that right now for about the next 45 minutes or about how long we can talk about it.
I'm actually really excited about today's episode because we're going to get into something that people get quite heated about.
I feel you're going to be excited about every episode.
I am, though. I'm always excited by discussion.
Well, it's cool. Well, I mean, wouldn't be that great of a podcast if we were not excited about every episode.
One of the most challenging things I face all the time is how to get people to discuss actually serious issues. So how do you get people to talk about politics and how do you get people to talk about their views on this and this? It's okay to disagree, and it's hard to get that across.
I think that's a lot of times people... Yeah, like there's a lot of times where people, when they think that if they can't agree, then you can't like that person anymore. And that's just not it. You can always respect somebody's views without agreeing on them.
No, in fact, I often respect people even more by their ability to disagree and still respect one another.
Right. That makes sense. And I agree with you. I mean, screw you, man. I disagree with that, and I hate you now.
And I respect you more for it.
But yeah, so today we're actually going to be talking about the drug war.
Boom, boom, boom.
We should have some crazy... We don't want to use crazy sound effects.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you do talk about the drug war, of course, a lot of times people think about marijuana. That's usually the first thing that people think about when you talk about the drug war. But we are going to be talking about the overall drug war and about all kinds of drugs.
I want to know about all of them, from ecstasy to crocodile to all of the...
Crocodile?
Yeah, crocodile is a new deadly drug that's come in from Russia.
Deadly? What is it? What does it do?
Well, it essentially gives you a lifespan of 2 to 3 years.
Nice.
It basically just allows your nervous system and cardiovascular system to decompose from the inside out.
But what I want to know... Is that going to be a really great 2 to 3 years?
Well, I'd ask, but I don't think there are that many users here in the States.
Probably not.
No, it's funny because when you said that when people usually hear the drug war, they're thinking about weed, right?
Yeah.
You were saying that we should have a sound effect to transition into this topic. The first thing that I thought of was like bong water.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
No, I think you're absolutely right. When it comes to the drug war, people often go to the most used drugs.
Well, yeah. What is it? It's like 40, and I realize like some of these, and again, if you disagree and if you think that we're wrong about this stuff, make sure to call in, let us know. But what is it? About 45% of people have admitted to using marijuana at some point. And that's pretty high.
Most of the rest are lying. But that number, of course, increases or decreases depending on how much active effort governments take to persuade people against them. And this is what I think we'll get to a little bit later on in terms of prohibition and such. But of course, in Europe, drug usage per person is a lot higher. The percentage of people who have tried drugs, but the actual percentage of people who habitually use drugs is much lower. So this is an interesting dynamic I hope to take a look at.
Yes. I was gonna say some stuff about alcohol use and about how people, here in North Dakota for a while, or even in the States, the percentage for alcohol used to be illegal at 18, then it went up to 21, and there was discussion about moving it back down to 18, and people just lost their minds, and they're just like, if you move it down to 18, like you'll see so much more alcoholism, and it's like, yes, there's going to be a moment where it goes on the rise, but then it would plateau. I mean, that's what people have to realize is, there's going to be an increase where all of a sudden you have 3 years where 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds are going to be like, holy crap, this is crazy. We can use alcohol now. But that's not everybody, too.
Well, and for the listeners out there, I think it's important to point out that Fargo isn't only known for a Coen Brothers film. Fargo is also known as the highest alcohol consumption per capita in the country.
Well, and Fargo, and then North Dakota is one of the largest binge drinking states in the
also
United
the state
States.
With the largest penises, according to the study.
So I wonder if there's any kind of correlation between alcohol use and penis size. Right now, there's some dude going, "I need to drink a beer."
Well, that would add a lot of credence to the alcohol they sell in China with those little gold flakes. They say it increases your member size. Yeah. No, I think it's actually interesting you bring up alcohol here, because when we talk about the drug war, nobody's talking about alcohol. Or tobacco.
Oh yeah, the legal ones, the ones that are worse for you than most of the drugs that we're going to be discussing tonight.
But alcohol certainly was the subject of prohibition.
Absolutely.
The prohibition of alcohol led to, and I think just about everyone understands this quite well, the prohibition of alcohol led to the rise of the black market and the mob. Yeah. It led to bathtub gin and speakeasies and all this kind of activity that normally occurred when it was legal, except now everything was under the table. Now everything became without subject to taxation, without subject to actual access to health care. And people who were caught with alcohol poisoning during Prohibition simply were left out in the cold.
Wow. That's I was, all I can think about when you started talking about this is there's that show on TV right now that's it's like where people are doing moonshining.
Oh yeah,
moonshiners or whatever.
Is that legal, by the way?
No, it is not legal, and that's why if you watch the show, there's a lot of times where the cameras are out in the woods and like videotaping some of this stuff. But what's crazy is that they can actually videotape it, and it's not unless they get caught in the act. But apparently, showing them on TV is not. It's not somehow they can't be arrested by watching that show.
Well, they went after Thomas Chong for weed. And that was largely because of his comedy and his movies. And I find it so hard to believe that moonshining would just be ignored by the authorities if it's on TV.
I don't know. I haven't done enough research into it, but I always found it insane because, they're constantly on edge about being caught because they will absolutely go to jail for it. But they're okay with being on TV about it. And they're even showing where they're putting their stills out in the middle of nowhere so they can't get caught with them and whatnot. And I'm just it just seems so insane.
Well, one of the reasons why the prohibition against moonshining is largely because you can't assure your quality or control. Your it's quite easy to make a bad batch of alcohol. Yeah, people go blind from it. And there was a pretty good reason why having federal regulations on how alcohol is made and inspections. That makes a lot of sense, especially if you're putting your money towards it.
Right. Well, and what's crazy is that you have really poor vision, and that wasn't from alcohol, but that's from that old adage that masturbation makes you go blind.
Well, I have to say, considering all that, my vision isn't that bad.
If you're saying the amount of masturbation you've done, your eyesight should be much worse. I get you.
Wow. No, so
Jeffrey, I'm over here.
So when we're talking about the war on drugs, I honestly can't wait to get to people's opinions on this because it is very diverse. We find people who are adamantly opposed to any illegal drugs of all kinds. Mm-hmm. We find people who are opposed to all drugs. People who don't drink, people who don't drink coffee. People who don't do prescription drugs.
People that only do the legal drugs, which
Yeah.
people that only smoke and they only drink, but at the same time, then they're completely against other drugs just because of the legality of it.
And then you have your classic adventurer who's willing to try everything and at least 3 times. So it's
like some weird FBI standard too. Like if you go in and like I believe it was like marijuana, and this was a few years ago. One of my friends went to go, try audition. What do you say? Audition, whatever, for the FBI or CIA. Oh. And it was like they could have tried marijuana 16 times. Apparently, at 17, that was too many times.
Oh my gosh. Tried it 16 times. At that point, you're still it's still up in the air.
Well, there's an old joke where it's like I've only smoked marijuana once for 3 years.
I like it. No, it's I find this whole dynamic to be very interesting because we rarely speak about things in terms of facts. Although it's becoming more common these days to find the media, there's TV. You will find casual drug users on TV, and it's no longer a big taboo. The movie industry obviously still rates things adult if there's any drugs involved, but there's the attitudes towards drugs in movies have radically changed since like the 70s and 80s, if you think about it.
Well, and what's really crazy is that you'll see more marijuana use, but tobacco use is not. I mean, if you look back on television, like everybody was smoking all the time. I mean, even Mad Men points that out, where like people are smoking all the time, but you really don't see it as casually as you do in movies anymore.
And I'd like to, I'd like to say that that's a symptom of how society is becoming more comfortable with the idea of discussing these things. And of course, who doesn't like a good old stoner flick? Where people are allowed to be
people that aren't stoners.
Yeah.
Although I do know people that don't smoke and they still do like stoner comedies. I think that's the one thing about marijuana is that they say if you legalize it, everybody would do it. There's a lot of people that I know that they're just like, you know what? I tried it. It really just wasn't for me.
I've seen a number of interviews recently where people say, were asked on the street, have you tried marijuana? And they're like, yes. Did you try it again? Well, no, it wasn't my thing.
Yeah. For a lot of people, it just doesn't do anything for them. And it's not like I don't mean that and that it doesn't get them high. Right. It's just that they don't like the effects that it does. And just because it would be legal doesn't mean that all of a sudden they would be like, well, now I've got to do it. It's legal, I have to do it.
There are a lot of things that once they become legal, people still just don't care about them.
Right.
Things.
Well, and that's like there's a quote by he's a retired captain of the police department and Perry something. Maybe we can add in a little clip later about what his actual name is.
Yeah.
But what he said is, like what they said, if we would legalize marijuana, isn't everybody going to be growing pot then? And I love that he said, well, you know what? You can grow your own tomatoes. But he goes, everybody's not doing that. He goes, you can make your own alcohol, but he goes, most people would prefer to just go out and buy it as opposed to make it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it's a lot of work, I've heard.
Yeah, like making your own alcohol?
Yeah. I mean, that would be a lot of work.
One of my buddies actually looked into creating a still, and he was just like, the amount of money that he would have to put into copper.
Yeah.
He said that's what stopped him.
Yeah. Having lived in Poland for a while, I can tell you that there's a strong tradition of producing your own alcohol at home. And it's not so much about cost. It is very much a sort of family event.
More of a tradition.
Yeah.
More of a tradition. Like instead of a turkey, they're making,
vodka. Yeah. That's right. But it is very expensive. And there's a counterculture that's saying it's just not worth it. Why maintain these traditions? And it's, just stemming from the Cold War. But when it comes to the way drugs are viewed, if I can bring it up, I'm angry. I am actually quite angry. Here's my gripe. When I was a kid, I was absolutely brainwashed by the DARE program.
By the way, I was in Counteract. And I've got a great story about Counteract, but go ahead about the DARE program.
No, it's just... When you're a kid, everything, the way it's marketed, the way it's presented, how could it go wrong, right? Police officers, friendly, engaging with their community, hosting activities for children, especially during the summer. It's just a great outreach program for the police. And I can see the value in that. But when it comes to the DARE program itself, which stands for Drug Abuse Resistance Education, when you actually learn that the government is allowed to lie to you in order to prevent you from using drugs, how can you continue to have a sense of trust to the police, to the government, and to any nationally recognized drug experts? And that is kind of a tricky thing.
So how do they lie? How does the DARE program lie to students?
Well, for one, they tend to perpetuate a lot of the myths about drugs.
Well, and that's one thing I just want to bring up. Like when we were doing research about some of the myths and facts, one of the things that I thought was most crazy about that is that you will find myths that'll say like marijuana is harmless, and then the fact is that marijuana is so deadly. But then you can find another fact that says marijuana is not harmful, or at least not as much as other legal substances.
And there are all different levels of harm, of course, and I'd like to get into
Maybe that was a bad example, but the point is that the myths and facts, it seems like facts is very, I don't think they understood the definition of fact.
Well, I don't like how they automatically associate so many of these things. So if I can read from the DARE website.
Okay.
It says, this year, millions of schoolchildren around the world will benefit from DARE, the highly acclaimed program that gives kids the skills they need to avoid involvement in drugs, gangs, and violence. So automatically, they're correlating any use of drugs with gangs and violence, when in fact the gangs and violence aspect of things, history would say, comes from the prohibition of drugs.
Correct.
And it says DARE was founded in 1983 in Los Angeles, and has proven so successful that it is now being implemented in 75% of our nation's school districts in more than 43 countries around the world. Now, when they say successful, I really want to understand what they mean.
Right, because it's
drug usage has gone up in the United States.
Yeah.
Attitudes towards drugs have become incredibly more lax. Drugs, some drugs...
Well, if that was the intention, they're doing great.
Yeah, well, I mean,
they are successful.
Oregon, Washington states, Colorado, what else? Who has many states have decriminalized. Some have completely made it legal for recreational use.
Right.
When they say successful, I really want to know what they mean.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what? One of my neighbors drives a DARE car. He's a policeman. He drives a DARE car around. We probably should have gotten him over to ask. He never would have spoke on this.
Well, it wouldn't hurt, too. Let's see if we can go try to interview him. You know?
Right now?
Right now.
Kids are probably sleeping.
You know, so this is... I remember as a kid, I had the DARE program as a part of my life, and I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. There were a lot of summer activities that kept me away from the, gangs of Fargo. We're laughing, of course, because, I mean, it's just not really a thing.
Not really.
And at the end of the day, I sincerely believed all of the things I was told, like drugs will kill you. There's no wiggle room in there.
Yeah, like marijuana, heroin, same thing.
Yep.
They both destroy your life.
They're on the same level. Marijuana is a gateway drug, they told me. All of these things, when in fact...
well, actually, I mean, milk is a gateway drug. I mean, because, I think if you look at the facts, what is it, like 90% of people that have tried milk have... No, I don't know. No, hold on. 90% of people that have done marijuana have had milk.
Oh my gosh.
It's a gateway.
Let's stand up to this oppressive liquid. No, in my travels, it became absolutely clear to me how many people had actually tried drugs, or how many people continue to use recreational drugs and live entirely normal lives. People who don't bring their recreational drug usage into their personal life. Mm-hmm. And it kind of upset me at that point. I'm looking back
that you didn't bring it into your life enough.
Well, the part that I'm upset about is that I was deceived.
Right. Yeah, I get you.
But that's just my perspective, and I know that a lot of people could rightly justify avoiding drug use, especially for children.
Yes. Well, yeah, they even said a lot of the studies on marijuana use points to that it can affect, and again, don't quote me on a lot of this, but it can affect you. It can have long-term effects before a certain age. Of course, while your brain is still...
I'm gonna correct you here.
Okay, go ahead and correct me.
The studies you're referring to are basically talking about the development of memory cells or memory expand. The plasticity of the brain tends to inhibit growth through marijuana, is my understanding of it, for under 18 users.
Right. So. But they actually said that use as an elderly person can help increase that plasticity, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Plasticity. Oh, yeah.
I have a lisp. It doesn't, that word won't come out. Plasticity. There we go.
There you go. I think it's
aluminum. I got
aluminium. Oh, my God. There's my gripe. You know what? I'm interrupting this drug talk for a real gripe that has been on my mind for a while, and I'm getting... It's aluminium.
Aluminum. Got it.
I want to talk a little bit about how much money...
Hold on. Before we get too far, let me tell you my story about Counteract.
Oh, yeah. Go for it.
Okay. I am from a very small town. I might have even mentioned it before. I'm not sure. But, okay, in my Counteract program, I was probably about 5th or 6th grade. And my parents were there because you were talking about when you were talking about DARE programs and you had all these fun activities. And this is like a 1-day, 1-hour thing. Our Counteract program.
Okay.
And it's counteracting drugs and violence. And again, so correlating those right away, that drugs and violence go together. But this was the greatest thing, and I think some people that hear this are going to go, what in the world? Okay, so I was about 5 or 6, and what they did was, and now, so there was a lot of classes in there. This wasn't just for 5th or 6th grade. And like I said, parents were there, and they lit marijuana. They lit the marijuana so then that way kids would know what marijuana smelled like.
What?
So then you could get away from it. I'm not kidding. I was 5 or 6 and...
5 or 6?
5 or 6, and I still remember this. So the first time I used marijuana was through the Counteract program because they lit it, and I walked up to it, and I couldn't smell it very well, so I took a big... They let me take in a breath of it.
Kindergarten was far more exciting that day.
You should have seen the painting I did.
Finger painting.
My enjoyment of music was better.
Playing house became so much more laid back.
I just couldn't believe that. I say that now, and that really happened. That is a true story. That I just cannot believe that happened. But yeah, so the very first time that I was ever introduced to marijuana was through the Counteract program. It was lit on fire by the police.
So, okay, so we both got exposed to this issue at a young age, and honestly, that information stayed with me. It really did. It stayed with me a long time because they did it year after year. It was a very effective system of, in my opinion, brainwashing.
Right. Well... the most effective brainwashing is when they get you young and they just continue to repeat it.
Yeah, and before I forget, we received an email this morning after we announced our topic from Bennett in California, and he said he'd like to call in. Now, fortunately, we don't have our number ready yet, so we gave him a call.
Yeah, Bennett, we would like to know, what's your opinion on the government's war on drugs?
Well, I think it's stupid across the board, but I think it particularly preys on minorities because everyone's to get arrested in disproportionate numbers and end up going to jail for offenses that don't have their crimes that don't have victims, which to me is not a crime. No victim, no crime is what I say. So there's a whole other spectrum in there where you could take into account whether or not someone's doing something that's self-destructive, which drug use is self-destructive, but the reason there's no real rationale behind sentencing someone who's self-destructive to prison time. That's just stupid. But those people need therapy, not jail time. So anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, I can give you an opinion, but it's probably what most of your callers are saying anyway. The drug war is stupid. The drug war is stupid, and we've known that for a really long time. And it's lasted so long. In specific, the war on drugs, as Reagan called it, that whole mentality it's gone on so long that I can't help but think that there are other factors at play, because it's inherently evil as far as I can tell, just based on the results. Puts people that are already in a financial situation in much worse situations because they're taking a really high-risk job created by a black market from legislation. They're taking a job to make the best money that they can, which is a rational economic decision. and they're taking not only a high-risk job for that, but they're also suffering, jail time from time to time. It's generally like your smaller players who are minorities that get popped for this kind of stuff and sentenced to really long jail time, and it just fucks families up even more. I could go on and on about this, but
well, excellent, man. No, that's great because of course, so that was something that we actually hadn't talked about. Was really about how it preys on the minorities and everything,
or the economic aspect of things.
Right.
Well, I would say the one thing that you probably won't hear from listeners that's really important to get to is that the solution that people are proposing of making drugs legal and taxing them is also very, very terrible. And no one's willing to say that. We should just legalize them and not tax them because really the education is the most important part. When people are free to make choices that can be adverse to them, like using drugs or selling drugs, you generally see that associated with drops and such things, because if you tell people they're free to do it and it's clearly a stupid decision, it starts to go down. But when you incentivize people to do it, it's a black market created by really heavy legislation, people will start to take to dealing drugs because it's profitable. So the other side of that is when people say you should legalize it and tax the shit out of it, what you're doing is essentially creating criminals out of the same people that were before, which is disproportionate numbers of minorities getting sent to jail for drug offenses, and they're getting sent to jail for tax evasion, which in the government side, they hate tax evaders worse than they hate drug peddlers. So you're actually like making worse enemies out of the same people and plugging up the justice system with more cases of people for tax evasion because there's still a black market if you tax it. So I think if you tax it at all, tax it low. But people need to know that the tax solution is stupid. It's awful. Like it's almost worse in some ways.
Wow. I got to say, that's a really great insight. So thank you for our first caller, Bennett from California.
Yeah, thank you, Bennett.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Now, of course, if you want to be involved in the conversation, we don't have a landline right now, but make sure to contact us at openmicgripe@gmail.com. Give us your phone number, and we might actually give you a call so you can be involved in the conversation.
So, Jay, what is the government doing in their effort to prevent people from doing drugs?
Well, for the longest time, there was definitely like a propaganda campaign about the dangers of drugs, and I think we've all heard about Reefer Madness.
Oh gosh!
If you haven't seen Reefer Madness, it's amazingly great about how smoking marijuana will turn you into like a raving lunatic.
Killer,
and sex crazed lunatic and.
Sponsored by the
American. Which doesn't sound so bad now that you put it that way. But no, I guess I'm not exactly sure what the government is doing, but I do know that they are spending more than $51 billion annually on the war against drugs.
51 billion?
Over 51 billion and every year on fighting these drugs. And a lot of
$51 billion.
Yes, and and that doesn't even include the cost of putting people in jail for minor drug offenses. That doesn't even count like the cost on taxpayers. This is just how much they're spending of our taxes.
Well, also we have to take into account, so when we talk about the cost of something, it's not just how much money is spent. We also have to take a look at how much revenue is not going into the economy for something that's made illegal. Well, I think I saw a statistic about that. Do you remember what that was?
Which one's that?
It was near. I think it was 30. Was it 30 billion or?
Well, okay. Well, I think one thing that you're talking about is since they have legalized marijuana in Colorado. Now, this information was actually from February 6th of 2015. They're actually looking that they are going to have to refund $30 million to taxpayers due to a budget surplus. Basically, all of the taxes that they got off of legal marijuana use and distribution. That is equal out to that. It's just $30 million that they want to give back. That they think that they have to give back to taxpayers.
Oh wow!
Okay, when they first in 2004, in February of 2014, they were expecting $184 million in marijuana taxes in the first 18 months.
What?
Yes. So, I mean, that's here in North Dakota, we have a budget surplus, but that's due to oil.
Okay.
And I guess I didn't look up the facts at how much of a surplus that we have, but that will tell you that most states are actually looking at this and going, wow, we can get a lot of money by legalizing marijuana and taxing it.
Yeah.
They think that that's a great idea. North Dakota is so far behind in the times. We will never legalize marijuana. We'll be one of the last ones to legalize it, also, especially if we have oil. Because they'll be like, we've got a surplus anyways, and we're going to use that on fighting abortion.
Oh, wow. Well, no, I mean, 50 billion doesn't seem like a lot of money when compared to, our national budget. And it would be easy to flippantly throw 50 billion, excuse me. It'd be easy to flippantly throw on these numbers. But just to put that in perspective, one of my favorite go-tos is NASA, because I think everyone can...
Because you want to have sex in space, yes.
It's absolutely true. I absolutely want
No,
to have sex.
You want to masturbate in space.
It's the same thing.
Okay. All right. You think sex and masturbation are the same thing. Interesting.
It's like
now I know
facilitated masturbation.
Now I know when you say how many people have you had sex with, you're always including yourself in that number.
There's the number one right there. But to put things into perspective, and I think we can really understand the power of NASA and what NASA has brought us as a nation and as a human species. The sheer amount of research, the sheer amount of invention, the sheer amount of exploration done. NASA is able to operate off of a little more than $17 billion a year. 17.
Wow.
So if you're able to spend $17 billion a year and have people living on an international space station,
right?
Then the $51 billion a year that goes to fighting drugs, and some would argue not too very effectively.
No, not like you said. Drug use is on the rise.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so this is just mind blowing. I mean, that's it's almost 4 times what NASA's budget is, and if you look at NASA's budget throughout the nearly 60 years that NASA has been operating, the entire budget for NASA over 60 years was only $100 billion.
Wow.
Let me see that.
That's crazy, man.
Oh, no, I let's see here. So from 1958 to 2011, I apologize.
Was it like 500 billion?
Yeah, it was 500 billion. So that is 10,
over 60 years.
Over 60 years. So that's 10 years of fighting drugs is the equivalent to everything we've ever discovered.
Everything we've accomplished through the space program.
That's incredible. So we're putting a lot of money into this. Mostly into not a lot of effect. And I think you also pointed out that the cost of the penitentiaries for keeping people locked up, we're not including that.
Right. We're not even looking at, we're just looking at how much is spent on the actual drug. We're not even how much it's costing. And let's not even think about not even how much it's costing us in taxes and putting people in prison, but the cost of putting low-level offenders into jail and the cost on their lives and their families. I mean, that's something that you can't even, that I don't even know if we could put into a number.
Well, I mean, I think you have to add a name sometimes. And I think adding a name and adding a personal story really makes a difference to people. For me, one thing that just makes me angry is the disproportionate amount of time that states send people to jail for minor drug offenses.
Oh, yeah.
For something that's legal in another state.
You can go to jail longer for a drug offense than you can for murder. For
manslaughter. It's absolutely insane. So Bernard Noble, a gentleman who lives in Louisiana, he's already spent 4 years in Louisiana prison for being caught with 2 marijuana cigarettes.
Marijuana cigarette?
Marijuana cigarettes.
Oh, like a joint? Hold on. Was it a joint or a blunt?
What I know is
wait, hold on. Is a blunt a marijuana cigar?
Jeez, man. What do I look like, a weed doctor? Anyway.
Strangely enough, you kind of do look like a weed doctor.
It's my dreadlocks, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I mean, in Louisiana, they probably call them jazz cigarettes.
But, or what is left-handed cigarette?
Left-handed cigarette?
I've heard that before, too, a left-handed cigarette.
Either way, we're being flippant about this, but the reality is, here's a man who's been sentenced to 13 years in prison with no shot at parole. No shot at parole because he had 2 marijuana cigarettes on him. Now tell me that's proportional.
Well, there's gotta be something else. They just didn't find him with 2 joints and send him to jail for 13 years.
According to the story I was reading, it sounds like this was the 3rd time he was an offender. The first time was...
But, did he have any kind of, did he get any kind of former trafficking?
Well, it says under Louisiana law, possession of any amount of marijuana up to 60 pounds is punishable by 6 months in jail in the first offense, up to 5 years in prison for the second offense, and up to 20 years for a third offense. So it's not important whatsoever about how much is
There's no difference between, a gram and 60 pounds by Louisiana law?
Correct.
That is... All right, well... Congratulations, Louisiana, for being ridiculous.
I'm taking back my previous prize that I've offered Louisiana for being the most forward state.
Yeah. You were misinformed.
Well, I mean, let's get to some of the misconceptions or myths, and then a little bit later, I'd like to bring up some of the emails we've received.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we didn't get too many because we're still kind of starting out, but luckily we got some actually great feedback. On it. So,
well, all we had to do was bring the subject up. We actually just said, people are asking, what's the gripe? We'd say, well, we'd like to discuss the drug war. Opinions come flowing, so it really didn't take much. But let's go over just a few of the myths, if it's okay. Would you have anything in mind?
There is no... Okay, will legalizing marijuana lead to increased use? I should say that this is actually coming from the Drug Policy Alliance. And they're saying that there is no evidence that implementing medical marijuana laws impacts the rate of adolescent use. So they're kind of answering that with adolescent use, of course. But I'll just run through a couple of them, and then we can kind of talk about what we want. Is marijuana a gateway drug? Most marijuana users never use any other illicit drugs.
Can I jump in on that one?
No. Go ahead.
The reality is that that's absolute hogwash. That's according to a Canadian Senate 2002 study, Cannabis, Our Position for Canadian Public Policy. I quote, "Cannabis itself is not a cause for any other drug use." This finding concurs with the conclusion of the U.S. National Academy of Science Institute of Medicine study in '99, which stated that marijuana is not a gateway drug to the extent that it causes, or even that it is the most significant predictor of serious drug abuse. So in other words, the studies we have, the information we have that science has presented us makes that absolutely false.
And just by life experience or whatever, I've noticed that there's more people that alcohol would actually be considered more of a gateway drug.
Oh yeah,
because there's a lot of people that actually have gotten really drunk and then done marijuana. Is that a correct use of it? And then they've used a marijuana when they wouldn't have sober.
Yeah,
but I don't know of many marijuana users that smoke and then be like, well, now seems like a good time to use alcohol.
Jay, I have a confession.
Oh, yes? Do you?
Yeah. Alcohol is absolutely a gateway drug. I one time smoked a tobacco cigarette.
What?
Yeah, it was just horrible. It was disgusting. But only alcohol brought me there.
Right. Yeah, because it really... Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I am not a drinker. I used to drink. And I would do a lot of things that I probably never would have done if I was not drinking. Right? I don't know if I use I don't know if my syntax on that was correct.
Most of it involved nudity.
There was plenty of times where there was nudity involved because I was drunk.
Well, okay, so what other myths do you have?
Let's see. Are more people becoming dependent on marijuana? This actually states that the rates of marijuana dependence have not increased over the past 10 years. And by the way, a little fact that this had is that it said marijuana has been consumed for at least 5,000 years. And it has a long history of traditional uses throughout Asia, Africa, Europe, and Americas.
Well, I kind of want to get away from marijuana a little bit, because although that is kind of the main go-to when people talk about the drug war, when it comes to other drugs, hard drugs, things that there are definitely more than negligible health hazards with. What kind of we're talking about? Things like cocaine and heroin and. So there's a range of drugs, obviously, and each one will affect you differently. But so one of these claims is that if you have a program of needle exchange, that it will increase drug use because people don't have to worry about disease spreading. When in fact we find that needle exchange not only dramatically lowers the spread of sexually transmitted infections and other diseases, but it also tends to get people the health care they need or the access to.
Right. Because they can go somewhere and then speak to somebody that can actually get them into the program that they might need to be into.
Correct. Yeah. No, that's,
which is not addiction counseling.
But it just means that people aren't afraid to be thrown in jail for being known as drug users. What else do you have?
Well, I don't have myths, but I did want to I just found this and I thought this was great. This is from Live Science. This is 6 party drugs that may have health benefits. I just wanted to point these out. Magic mushrooms. Let's see. There's been some evidence that small amounts of psilocybin can relieve the symptoms of cluster headaches, obsessive compulsive disorder, and depression. It also says that the drug slowed activity in the center of the brain that are hyperactive in people with depression. That's good. Ecstasy, it said, make it useful in treating post-traumatic stress. Cocaine is good for topical anesthetic for surgical procedures. LSD, a study from Norway, published in 2012 in the Journal of Psychopharmacology, suggests that LSD prevents alcoholics from relapsing during treatment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I thought that was great.
Well, if I can jump in again, this idea that Norway is allowing research on LSD is actually quite interesting to me, because here in the United States...
Well, the government did it too.
Right, and here in the United States... doing formalized studies based on LSD, based on marijuana, but these things are incredibly restricted and oftentimes even banned. So much so that large pharmaceutical companies are going to countries like Ecuador to test their LSD effects on, say, post-traumatic stress disorder and other things. And I find that very interesting, so that United States, which is often considered to be the center of scientific inquiry and where the money is for studies, is exporting all of these research projects, because it's just not allowed here. Not even for research projects.
I don't know what to tell you, man. Although I do believe that for back when I was in college, I do know that you could actually get strains of psilocybin for research, which of course I'm guessing that has probably changed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I had a Mormon buddy who's a bad Mormon. That he actually was looking into that. Let's just say he was looking at it, probably not for research. Well, probably a different type of research.
I'm sure he was a good person, just a bad Mormon.
Yeah.
Ironically, those two go hand in hand. But no, I think it's interesting how when we look back, and for me personally, I have often appreciated the wisdom, the writings, and the words of people like Carl Sagan.
Right.
Of wonderful writers, journalists, scientists, all of whom now as an adult I look back and I realize how much their own writing was influenced by the consumption of drugs.
Well, let's be honest, we wouldn't have some really great music if it wasn't for drugs.
Oh, Cream.
Yeah, sure, Cream.
Cream, man.
Although you know what? You showed me Cream for the first. That sounds weird. You had me listen to Cream. I've never listened to Cream, and okay, I can see how that was probably influenced by drugs. That was pretty good music.
Also, I need to point out, if someone's doing a lot of weed,
many weeds,
many of the weeds, yes. The worst thing that's going to happen is they've consumed too many jazz records.
Well, that's the crazy thing. I mean, think about, especially North Dakota being such that alcohol really is a problem here.
Yeah.
People can overdose get alcohol poisoning very easily. You cannot overdose on marijuana. I mean, well, you can, but it's like you would have to smoke like pounds in such a short amount of time.
Actually, you can't. It's physically impossible to overdose on marijuana. The reality is your body would suffocate from carbon monoxide poisoning before you could ever attain the requisite amount of THC in your system to kill you. So that's or the other natural effect, of course, is that you vomit with high doses. So you can't overdose. It's physiologically impossible. Which is amazing. How many people have died from marijuana in history? No one. Zero. So you could say, of course, that there are people who, because of their use of marijuana have done certain activities that they wouldn't have normally done. People might say jump off high ledges or.
I don't know a lot. Like,
There was
I don't
one
know
case
a
in
lot of
Colorado.
people that are like smoking marijuana and going, "Let's go skydiving." It's more like, "Let's eat Cheetos." But if somebody was like super drunk, they're going to be like, "Let's climb this water tower."
Well, to be fair, if I had a pool, I would probably want to jump off the roof.
But I would do that on alcohol. I think if I would ever smoke marijuana, I don't think that I would be like jumping off of a building. Sounds like a good idea.
No. If I was a consumer of marijuana, I would probably struggle to get off the couch.
Yeah.
But no, that's and it's of course now that it's legal in a number of states, we're talking about the issues related to driving, right?
Right.
And
they have done studies that they're not saying that marijuana doesn't affect a driver, but what they're saying is that it likely makes them much more cautious. Which that could be bad, sitting on, if you're stopped at a stoplight or a stop sign, for 30 minutes, that's probably not good. But at the same time, I've known
it's
people...
a mild annoyance compared to people driving drunk.
Oh, which is absolutely insane. I do want to bring up that there is a little study that was done called by Doug Benson called Super High Me.
Oh, the comedian?
Yes, the comedian Doug Benson.
Wait, wasn't he the guy who how long did he smoke? He smoked
1 month.
1 month?
Well, it was based off of like the Super Size Me, the Morgan Spurlock movie.
Okay.
Super Size Me, and so he did a play on that called Super High Me, where he did 30 days no marijuana use, and then went through some tests, and then he went back, and then he did 30 days of marijuana use. To test the effects. And just a few things that I thought were great is, first of all, let me just say that the physician concluded that there were his health effects were generally inconsequential.
Oh.
So 30 days of using marijuana use, and there was basically nothing, no large difference between 30 days of being clean and 30 days
with the
of
exception
use.
of his appetite.
Yes, that is one of the negatives. They said that after 30 days of not using marijuana, he was down 2 pounds. But after 30 days of marijuana, he was up 8, which of course leads into why it's prescribed to people with AIDS or people with
Eating
disorders. The ones that I thought was another one I thought was interesting is that they did say lung capacity was down. He was at about 92%, and now he's not a smoker or anything beyond marijuana, but it actually went down to 98%. And of course, that doesn't even take into account edibles.
It went down to 98%?
No, sorry, 89%. Did I say 98?
Yeah.
But it went from
that makes more
90,
sense.
so it went down 3%. But these were the ones I thought were great, is that they always talk about your sperm count is decreased by long-term marijuana use. His sperm count actually increased, which I thought was interesting. His SAT score went from 980 up to 1,030. So it actually went up higher after 30 days of marijuana use. Yes.
Well, they should have told me that in high school.
Probably not good in high school, but he's an adult, largely due to verbal. And then the one that I thought was kind of crazy, which this could be completely random, but he did a psychic ESP test. And it went from 1 in 25, so you got 1 in 25 of these questions right, but after 30 days of marijuana use, 7 out of 25 right. Who knows? Maybe it's getting him in touch with something in his brain that we just don't know.
Well, actually, I think you're onto something because although, of course, I laugh at the very notion of ESP. There is a strong correlation to people who experience drug-related effects and religious experiences.
Right. Well, there's a reason why shamans use, like Indians use, shoot, I can't remember the peyote.
Yeah.
Shamans have used
Ayahuasca.
magic mushrooms.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why shamans and everything, why there's a correlation between religious experiences and drug use.
Well, I wonder if that's also related to why churches don't want you to use it.
Why wouldn't churches want you to have your own religious experience? Probably because it wouldn't match with their talking about religious experience.
It would be Yoda speaking to you.
Well, that'd be an interesting experience. I don't know if that would be... what are you saying? Star Wars? Well, to some people, Star Wars is a religion.
Well, they say, of course, the near-death experiences, and although this is a slightly different topic, the near-death experiences that occur are strongly in line with what people are influenced by, and they find that people who are Trekkies who have near-death experiences have Spock coming and talking to them.
Well, Nimoy is now dead, so why couldn't he?
Come back in Jedi form. Crossover. Okay, so we've reached the point in the show where we'd like to bring up, this is our second episode. We have had a few emails, and because we brought this up on Facebook, and we had a few responses. And
it's about the only way we can reach out, really, until we get more listeners, so tell your friends.
Bring your friends, yes. So I would love to read for you one of these emails. And we tried to choose a cross-section of opinions. So
I mean, some of it was, dude, drugs are cool.
Yeah.
And they mumbled like I did, just like that.
So here we go. An email from anonymous person.
Put it this way. We're not going to say anybody's name. So, I mean, it's just going to be easier that way. So, some people didn't care.
This person says, I've been a dedicated father, an exemplary postal employee, and an avid pot smoker for over a decade. If my occasional use has never negatively affected my family, job, or health, why should the government feel they need to legislate my life?
Well, because the government feels a need to legislate anything they don't like.
Well, I mean, I certainly can't answer this question for him, but
a postal employee, though, huh? He works for the government.
Well, I think this he does, and of course, he might be subject to random testing. That's interesting. So he's willing to risk all of that.
Right, but if he's... Well, they're probably not testing him very often if he's been an employee for 10 years and there's never been a problem.
Well, I don't know if he's been an employee for 10 years, but it says that he's been smoking for a decade. What I find interesting about this is, and I've heard this a lot, is this idea of a victimless crime. Mm-hmm. Not all drugs create victimless crimes. I think if you are causing great harm to your ability to bring in income for your family, or your ability to be a father, or obviously that wouldn't be victimless. Right.
Another one that we got, and I think this probably encompasses a lot of people's opinion, the younger generation and whatnot, but they said, I'm a 23-year-old bartender who doesn't drink, who gives a F if I smoke after 12 hours of slinging drinks. You got your fix, why can't I have mine? I guess because it's illegal, but I think we've kind of realized that there's not a lot of reasons why, why...
I wouldn't nominate this person to be the sort of weed advocate of the medical industry ads. But yeah, it's a very good point. It's this is a person who... it sounds like they work at a bar. They're giving people a drug.
Yeah, well, bartenders usually work at bars.
They're giving people drugs all night long.
Yes, a legal drug, which again in North Dakota is one of the worst.
Not
drugs.
Only in North Dakota,
yes,
everywhere.
and everywhere else. But I mean, with us being one of the worst, we definitely have an alcohol problem here. And what they're saying, and of course, I don't know if this person was actually from North Dakota, but then they're saying like after a long shift. Basically, they're just, having a smoke, and they just don't understand why they couldn't do that. By the way, I don't know if I could be... never mind. Never mind. For some reason, I read that as 12 hours of... people of 12 hours of drinking. And I was just trying to imagine somebody just smoking constantly for like 12 hours.
Wow.
Like, that would be insane.
Yes,
I'm sure people can do it, but I'm like, it seems like a lot. But of course, I guess they're probably not smoking like smoking marijuana.
It sounds like your comedian friend Doug Benson from the Super Jaime documentary could probably do that.
Probably, I have no idea.
Okay, so I've got another one here. This is interesting. It says she's a single mother of 3. By the way, this is from somebody who wants to be called Minnesota Martha. Thank you, Minnesota Martha. I'm a single mother of 3. I've never used any illegal drugs or tobacco throughout my life. I'm concerned about how to educate my kids about drugs without lying to them. I want them to have a proper understanding of the effects and the dangers.
Well, apparently don't put them into the DARE program.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Going back to the DARE program just for a second, you have to I'm trying to. I have a document here which is actually quite interesting, but it's going into how the drug czar, so the person responsible for drug control in the United States, is legally required to lie.
Required to lie.
He's legally required to lie about the effects of drugs in order to dissuade people from using them. And this is actually quite interesting. It's saying that he in no way can advocate for any use of Schedule 1 drugs. And Schedule 1, of course, are the heroin, and somehow marijuana is up there.
Oh, marijuana, heroin. Yeah, those sound like they're right on the same level.
And so because of that, if he were to admit that marijuana could have medical applications, it would lead to revising the legal system, and so the drug czar is legally.
Well, didn't you say that there actually is a bill right now that is actually looking to try to move it? Because of course, I think anybody with 2 cents, half a brain, can figure out that heroin and marijuana, even if you've never used either of them, can realize that they are not on the same level.
Right.
And I think that's kind of ridiculous that they are put on that same kind of level. But you did mention something earlier about the bill out right now that is looking to move it to a Schedule 2. So just dropping it from level 1 down to a level 2.
Right now, through the United States Senate, they're passing a few bills that reevaluate how the federal government evaluates specifically marijuana, not any other drug, due to, obviously, the conflict between the states and the federal perspective on this. And that's going to radically change things and accelerate the rate at which states are able to look at their own systems for control and or legalization of this drug. But it's interesting how the drug czar can do that. And as for, and I think I just want to commend Minnesota Martha and tell her how much I really appreciate her desire to find this objective understanding
especially
of drugs.
especially not using drugs. She could very easily just been like, I've never used drugs, you don't use drugs.
Yeah.
But I think she's looking at it from a very good point where she just doesn't want to lie to her kids about it.
Well, she clearly cares about her kids and wants them to make reasonable decisions.
Right. And informed decisions. I think that's probably a good way to put it, is informed decisions.
You know, the neuroscientist Sam Harris often liked to write about the nature of drugs and with his children. I mean, he'd said, if I came home and found out my kids were on drugs, he'd be disappointed as a father. But as a neuroscientist, he would be more disappointed if his kids grew up without ever having to experience hallucinogenic drugs, because that's a part of their brain that they were never able to explore.
Interesting.
And so this is sort of, it shows the range of concerns that parents have between protecting them from drugs, but on the other hand, wanting them to be able to explore a part of their brain.
I don't think all parents want kids to explore all parts of their brain. But yeah, you know what? So I think we've actually had a pretty good talk today.
Yeah.
Did we solve anything? No. We absolutely did not. We didn't solve anything. I'm looking at Jeffrey's face. He seems to disagree. But the point is we're not here to solve the world's problems. We're here to gripe about them.
Yeah, I think we made quite a few gripes, and I don't disagree with you. I agree with you. We weren't set out to solving anything, but most importantly is I'm glad to hear a little bit from you guys out there.
And we do want to hear, even though we have covered this, we're obviously there's going to be some gripes that are going to come up time and time again.
Yeah.
But that's one thing. So if you've heard this and want to write in or let us know, again, our sorry, I had to look at my sheet because I couldn't remember. It's Open Mic Gripe. If you want to email us, it's openmicgripe@gmail.com. Of course, you can tweet us at Open Mic Gripe.
Yep, at Open Mic Gripe, all one word. And feel free to let us know if you'd like to join in. We can always give you a call if you feel like your voice needs to be on the show, and we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to write us.
Yep, and of course we'd like to get in some experts. If there's any experts out there that are just like, these guys are idiots.
No, let me be completely we're a pair of jackasses.
Yeah. So if there's any experts out there, like, I need to school these fools.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're more than willing to change our own perspectives on this, and we're more than willing to listen to you and enjoy disagreeing. So feel free to call in no matter what side of the argument you're on, and we want to hear your personal gripes as well. So,
and I just want to give a quick preview. I know sometime coming up, we're going to have kind of a hodgepodge episode where we're just going to talk about a bunch of small gripes that people talked about. But until then...
Yep. This is Jeffrey Ide, and I'm here with...
Jay Rice.
Jay Rice, and we'd like to thank you for joining us and listening to the Open Mic Gripe, a place where serious and silly complaints come to chat.
Yeah, we definitely hope that you enjoyed this episode, and of course, if you didn't, check us out next week when we will be discussing your gripe.